scourged, and mocked, the Son of Man was led upon the last of his earthly journeys. It was but a short journey, for the place of crucifixion lay not far beyond the city walls. But all the unutterable weariness of his trial before the Jews, his trial before the Romans, the scourging and shame of the final mockery, had sapped his strength so much by now that when the soldiers placed upon his shoulders the cross upon which he was to die, he scarce could carry it no further than the crowded street that led out of the city. The centurion in command summoned from the crowd a strong and sturdy man whose name has passed into history as Simon of Cyrene. And him, says St. Matthew, they compelled to bear the cross. Along the Via Dolorosa, that way of aching shame and grief, there were the thousands of pilgrims to the Passover. And among them, there must have been many who, but a few short days ago, had cast their cloaks before him, had lifted their voices in those glad hosannas, had seen with their own eyes the sick made whole, the lepers cleansed, the blind restored to sight, the halt and maimed returned to freedom. And many must there also have been watching, who gloated that the man they had so long sought to ensnare was on his way, at last, to crucifixion. The record tells us of no single man who raised a voice to pity him. But St. Luke assures us that there followed him a great company of people and of women, which also bewailed and lamented him. Despite the marching soldiers ahead of him and behind him, the Son of Man paused in his weariness long enough to give these women solemn warning.
Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming in which they shall say, Blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bear.
They came at last to the place which is called Calvary. And there his cross laid down by Simon of Cyrene on the ground, and the crosses of the malefactors laid on either side of him. The Son of Man was stripped and nailed to the cross. Over his head, they affixed the superscription Pilate had commanded. The words were written in Greek and Latin and Hebrew, so that no single soul who saw them might fail to grasp their meaning. The King of the Jews, that superscription said. And now, as the cross was lifted up against the sky, that title too rose with him. And on either side of him, the crosses of the malefactors were also embedded in the ground. And what a sky it was against which those crosses rose. It was the middle of the day, and yet a terrifying darkness now began to creep across the world. It was no shadow caused by an eclipse. It was no cloud or mist. It was a darkening of the very face of heaven. And now it was, as the cross of Jesus fell into the shadow of this nightless night, that the Master looked upon the faces of the soldiers, attitude, who mocked him.
Thou that destroyest the temple and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself and come down from the cross.
Even the chief priest and the scribes did not refrain from adding to this mockery.
He saved others. Himself he cannot save.
Let Christ, the King of Israel, descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe.
Ye trusted in God, let him deliver him now, if he will. For he said, I am the Son of God.
Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Even one of the malefactors, hanging at his side, joined in this final mockery.
If thou be the Christ, save thyself and us.
And yet, the other malefactor had other words to say.
Dost thou not fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man hath done nothing amiss. Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom.
Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise.
At the foot of the cross, the soldiers took the garments of Jesus and made 4 parts, to every soldier a part. But the coat they did not rend, for it was woven without seam. This they cast lots for, that the scripture might be fulfilled, which saith, They parted my raiment among them, and for my vesture they did cast lots. Among the crowds who stood and watched, deriding him or holding their peace, came yet another little group of people to the foot of the cross. They were Mary, his mother, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, Salome, and the disciple John.
How cold it grows. But thou, Mary Magdalene, support his mother's arm. See how she falters. It grows so dark, I scarce can see my son.
O Mary, fear thee not to look upon him. He looketh down on thee.
My son! My son.
Mary, dear lady, place thy weight on me. There now, thou mayest behold him clearly.
He looketh first at me, John, and then at thee, and then at me again.
Woman, behold thy son.
Oh, Mary, now he hath turned his eyes on me.
Behold thy mother.
So be it, Lord. So be it. Mary, Mother.
I thirst.
The centurion took a sponge and dipped it in a vessel brought by other women of Jerusalem, a mercy drink of vinegar and gall to deaden pain. But when he had tasted thereof, we are told, he would not drink. Into what agony the pains of crucifixion had now brought him, we do not know. But in unutterable torment, he spoke into the night the most terrible of all words from his cross.
My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. It is finished.
moment of his death, the veil of the temple was rent in twain, and a darkness, deep, unearthly, filled with terror, fell upon Jerusalem. And now there came into the record a good man and a just, as St. Matthew refers to him, Joseph of Arimathea. He was a member of the Sanhedrin itself, yet he had not consented to the deeds his fellow counselors had had a hand in. And now, risking their fury on himself, he begged from Pilate the body of Jesus. And we are told he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, where never man before was laid. Against the mouth of this sepulchre, a heavy stone was rolled, and the women of Galilee who had watched the burial returned into the city to prepare spices and ointments with which they might anoint his body. Throughout the whole of the period of the Passover itself, through the quiet of the Sabbath, they rested in accordance with the law of Moses. To the disciples who had forsaken Jesus in his hour of need in Gethsemane, all now seemed over. The master they had hailed as the Messiah was crucified and buried. And as they drew together again in Jerusalem, torn with grief and overshadowed by despair, it seemed to them that all for which they had worked and prayed was now forever lost to them. Among the many thousands of happier men and women keeping the Passover, they withdrew into a house where they found some peace and stillness in their mutual grief.